Hey guys, LevelCap here, and today I wanted to talk about Battlefield 6. Right now, we really don't know anything about the game, other than it's coming out next year. EA's CEO is happy with the progress DICE are making, and that's about it. DICE has a long history of listening to the community and incorporating their feedback into their game, but sometimes if a design gets solidified too early, a lot of that feedback just isn't realistic or cannot be implemented properly. So now is a great time to get those ideas out there if the developers are listening. First things first, we got to decide on a setting. The Battlefield community, in my opinion, is particularly sensitive to the setting of their games, and I would like to see the franchise return to modern era. Not only would a modern setting give DICE more creative freedom, but it would also give them more opportunities to create unique and interesting weapons, gadgets, maps, and more. It's great seeing historical battles brought to life in games, and when DICE nails it, they do it better than anyone. But as we saw in Battlefield 5, straying too far from reality hurts the overall experience. We all have certain expectations when it comes to games based on historical events. Going with a modern or even fictional setting lets DICE do really whatever they want without it coming off in an inauthentic way. I'd like to see a fictional or modern war. I'd very much be okay with a rehashing of Battlefield 4. You're fighting Russia, you're fighting China, everybody's sort of mixed together, and it gives you a big variety of different locations and weapons to pick from. And speaking of weapons, I hope DICE goes back to the drawing board with their weapon customization system. People really liked the variety of attachments that Battlefield 4 offered, but in my opinion, the user interface and the explanation of those attachments was extremely poor, so it was very difficult for the average user to actually understand what they were doing to their gun when they put certain attachments on. A better UI that communicates attachments, but also giving a huge amount of freedom in how you want to set up your gun would be perfect for a modern shooter. The fact that I stopped doing the loadout series with the more recent Battlefield games was just because there wasn't enough interesting meta or setup or customization with weapons anymore. It was all pretty basic, and there just wasn't enough customization or variability in how you set up your kit to make videos about doing that worthwhile or interesting. And so it would be nice to get a little bit more of that depth and nuance back into the Battlefield franchise. Now, when it comes to gun handling in the next game, I think Battlefield 5 pretty much nailed it. And despite Battlefield 5's numerous issues, the gunplay for the majority of its lifetime wasn't the issue. No suppression, actual recoil patterns, snappy and responsive shooting, it just felt right. And as much as I like the gunplay systems from Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, I really do think that Battlefield 5 improved upon it. It gave each weapon a pretty distinct feel, which you could argue that Battlefield 4 didn't really do that well. That being said, they could push it a little bit further. Having truly fixed recoil patterns that extremely dedicated players could master for precision accuracy and fully automatic fire could be a cool way to add that extra level of skill to the gunplay and maybe attract some players who otherwise wouldn't be interested in the game. Then again, it might also open up for new types of hacks or recoil control systems, but you know what? Battlefield has kind of always had a problem with hackers at this point. Adding in a system like that, I don't think would make it any worse. An expanded battle pickup system would also be a fun addition to the game. Battlefield 4 had one-shot sniper rifles and super-powered rocket launchers tucked away on several maps. It was pretty rare to die to them, but in the right hands, they were actually incredibly powerful. Bringing them back and throwing in some more offbeat weapons like flamethrowers or katanas from Battlefield 5 could certainly be fun and just add that extra variability to the gameplay. When it comes to classes and what they did on the Battlefield, I think few games did a better job than Battlefield 1 in sort of allowing people to excel in their specific roles, but also allowing enough overlap so that, say, if a tank rolled up on the field and you were a sniper, well, there was a chance that you have something that you could at least do to contribute to that fight. Snipers had K bullets, they could deal damage to vehicles, so you didn't feel totally useless, but you still weren't a class designed for close quarter combat. You could just contribute if you actually needed to, or you felt like you could maybe make a play that made a difference. And that was my favorite part of Battlefield 1. Well-defined roles, very specific purposes for each class, and yet they could all still help out in just about every situation. This was something that really did go away in Battlefield 5, where certain classes just couldn't do anything to vehicles, and so for a large portion of the game you feel helpless, completely helpless when a tank rolls up. You're just like, all right, I guess I'm gonna die now, or I just have to try and run away as fast as I can. Now, in Battlefield 5, I think DICE really lost their way when it came to vehicle balance. In my opinion, vehicles have only been fun in Battlefield games where they can have good infantry versus vehicle interactions. If infantry don't feel like they can fight against vehicles properly, then guess what? It's not going to be fun when vehicles are on the battlefield killing you before you either even know they're there, you don't see them coming, or there's nothing you can do to fight back against them. That's not fun. Battlefield 1 did an excellent job of this, allowing you to take out low-flying aircraft with anti-tank grenades, hitting them with your AT rocket gun, sniping pilots out of aircraft. There was a lot you could do as infantry to deal with airplanes and tanks, and it was fun. It was well balanced. There's a lot of cool counters there. In Battlefield 5, that was almost non-existent, and DICE really needs to look at that infantry versus vehicle relationship in their next game and find a fun balance so that everybody's having fun, whether you like playing in vehicles or not. Now, squad play has been one of those ongoing challenges in Battlefield games. Squads that squad up but then don't stick together or work as a squad don't really mean much other than just having some teammates that look green instead of blue. One thing I did like about the squad play additions in Battlefield 5 though was the ability for squad leaders to call in reinforcements. This was a cool way for squads to get advantages for working together and doing well as a squad, so there was at least some decent incentive there. Would love to see that maybe evolved in Battlefield 6. Now, having a core gameplay mode with Battlefield has always been weird for DICE, and it seems like the best mode that players like the most changes from game to game. Conquest is obviously always going to be a fan favorite and a staple of the franchise, but Operations in Battlefield 1 is something a lot of players seem to enjoy in hindsight. DICE should bring back the Battlefield 1 format and streamline it with maps built specifically for it instead of just slapping together a collection of maps and having us play different modes on each thing. I'd also like to see Conquest updated so objectives work more like control points. Giving each team a real reason to fight over each specific flag would eliminate maybe some of the zerging and end the constant backcapping we've seen in Battlefield 5. Making these central objectives more valuable by letting the team that holds them have access to weapon depots or even new squad leader reinforcements would mean players could spend more time actually fighting over essential objectives instead of aimlessly wandering to whatever flag isn't already capped. Now, the cosmetic system in Battlefield 5 has been widely divisive. Some people like having all the outlandish outfits and elite soldier skins. Other players just want soldiers to look authentic. I'd like to see DICE give us a more robust character customization system, perhaps with a bit more time spent on making cooler looking cosmetics or even authentic looking cosmetics. But the biggest issue for me with the current system is that it just makes certain classes unrecognizable. I shouldn't have to need the game's UI to tell me if someone is an enemy or friendly or what class they are. They should be recognizable at a glance based on previous Battlefield games. In the grand scheme of things, enemies are enemies and I'll shoot them regardless of their class, but it is nice to have an idea of what targets you should prioritize based on their classes. In Battlefield 5, you could have snipers wearing medic helmets to throw other snipers off, making you think that you're actually not dueling another sniper when in fact you are. These kinds of things need to go away. I do like having a more robust customization system with more options in it. It just needs to be better implemented and better balanced. Now, one thing I think DICE needs to not only overhaul completely, but build into the game from the ground up to be well supported is the progression system. They tried to make it enjoyable in Battlefield 5, but once you hit a certain rank, all subsequent levels are essentially the same. There's no point to getting rank 500 in Battlefield 5. Battlefield 6 needs all sorts of rewards, achievements, and other cosmetic things tied to your actual rank. Assignments also need to be reworked so that players are not being distracted from their objectives or helping out teammates to try and unlock some sort of weapon skin. It should also all be in the background, so if you're playing a lot with certain classes or weapons, you're just going to be unlocking things that you didn't have to equip somewhere else. Basically, many other games have implemented great progression systems. Battlefield 5's was terrible, but it was DICE's real first attempt at trying to expand the system. They just did a horrible job. Hopefully Battlefield 6 can look at what other games are doing, such as Call of Duty, to give players a seemingly endless number of assignments they can work on and cool things to show off that indicate how much time you've spent with certain weapons or classes. Probably the biggest thing Battlefield 6 needs, though, is a return to the franchise's roots as a sandbox experience. sniping pilots out of planes and helicopters, C4 jeeps, sweet jumps, destruction. It all needs to come back, and not just as a gimmicky feature, but as a core component of the game's design. These things aren't novelties. They are what makes Battlefield feel like Battlefield. Players can do so many wacky things in Battlefield 4 that they just can't in Battlefield 5. DICE even ruined some of the fun in Battlefield 4 with Levolution turning the dynamic destruction into more scripted set pieces. I'd love to see something on the scale of Levolution that is totally player driven. Let me drive a C4 Jeep off of a jump into a helicopter. Let me blow up a whole building just to get a sniper in the top floor. Let's let players experiment and do weird stuff enabled purely by the game and not with scripted or planned events. That has been the heart of the fun for most of the Battlefield games I've played. As long as the crazy stuff doesn't derail the general gameplay, I say get it all in there. And that wraps it up for my Battlefield 6 wish list. What do you guys think? What are some of the top things you would like to see in the next Battlefield game? As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing off.